Selamat welcome! Today we'll be discussing my Blue Cindra list and all the updates I've done to it, and you'll also get to see it in action in aggro mirror. But first, let's dive in to the deck tech. So previously, the Cindra Hot Mommy deck, that's what I call the blue list, was running 16 blues and 44 reds, which I heavily emphasize on running the 1 for 7s, which is on paper really like good rate. It's the same rate as Chase the Tail, one of Zen's best cards. However, I felt like in racing matchups, just having good numbers sometimes isn't enough. You want on hits, you want stuff that's scary for your opponent, and we didn't have that here. And second, being at 16 blues meant that if you drew 2 or more blues, sometimes it gets kinda scuffed. Even though our blues are good value, like Throw Dagger is almost always good because you can just cantrip it and most likely it'll be a red. Dragon Power can be a 1 for 5, Stabboon is a 0 for 5. Concealed Blade lets you help land your massive momentum, but Dragon Power doesn't work if you don't have the fealty or you don't play Brand with Cinderclaw with it. Concealed Blade, the help that you get to land the Mom trigger of being 1 card, 1 power, doesn't really benefit you if it's an aggro race and they're letting your Mom hit anyway. And having too many 1 costs, like Mounting Anger, was sometimes really iffy, having multiple 1 cost cards in hand. And we were only running 1 Ancestral Empowerment, even though this is a massive momentum deck, felt kinda off. Like every time I drew this card, it felt really good. So what I did was I bumped the number. So this is the new list. I'll highlight the change. I'll be going back and forth between this new list that I use at my RTN and the previous list that you already saw the deck tech of. First is bumping the number of Ancestral Empowerment, since this is easily the best card in a momentum deck, especially since we're running more on hit, like letting your opponent try to block you out in an aggro mirror and then you just blow them up with this feels really nice. Even in a non-aggro mirror, it just feels really good whenever you use this. It cantrips, so you don't lose the card, unlike Concealed Blade. And target ninja attack, most of our attacks are ninja, except for a few exception, being the Oath of Loyalty and Blaze Headlong. Everything else is a ninja attack. So that's the first change. The second change is I'm running yellow Brand with Cinderclaw. Previously I was running blues because I want this is a blue list, I want more blues, but what am I using those blues for? It's usually for resource, and when you draw multiple in hand, it's kind of iffy. Meanwhile, yellow Brand also fulfills the same function. You just dagger 1 time less, or you don't have the extra resource to play a 1 cost, but whenever you have a blue and this, you don't feel as bad for playing it, because sometimes you really want to play it, you don't have a fealty and you want to turn on your Draconic Matter stuff like Art of Dragon Blood, Art of Dragon Fire, and your other Dragon Power. You still want to play your Brand with Cinderclaw, and playing a blue Brand with Cinderclaw really sucks. So drawing inspiration from the Yuki list, even though I didn't turn my list into Redline, I picked up the inspiration that, just play this. You dagger 1 time less, or you need your vest to get the resource to play your 1 cost if you want to dagger. That's still fine. It's worth the trade being able to play a 2 power card instead of a 1 power card on your attacks. Second, I trimmed one of the Demonstrate Devotions, although it's on paper it's your best fealty generator, being a breakpoint that helps Mom triggers, and the fealty is unconditional, unlike Mark with Magma. But being a 2 block kind of sucks, and as a blue list where we have a combo turn accessible to us sometimes, having more good value blocking cards is better. That's why I trimmed 1 copy, but it's still overall a very good card. The next new addition that was not present in the previous list is Devotion Never Dies. This is what I would call the aggro breaker. This is something that the redline list could not run, because to get full value from this, you need to have the pitch or the resources to be able to play this multiple times, and usually you're only playing ever one cost cards in a turn. At most you can play 2 if you have like Blood Run Steep, and then you take both chest resources at that turn, but you need to line that up. It's really iffy. Meanwhile, we're running blues, so we can easily like dagger Devotion Never Dies, and then if they don't block it, which means they're either committing armor or 2 cards, we have the extra resource to just Devotion Never Dies again. And if we ever have like a fealty, or we have our chest resource still available, or if we have multiple blues, we have extra empowerment, this just gets too much value that they can basically never let it hit. But when they try to block it as Xaxes, we're running 3 Ancestral Empowerments and 3 Concealed Blades. It's it gets really rough really fast for the opponent. Next up is Hot on Their Heels. We trimmed one of the Hot on Their Heels to make space for all the new stuff. Why I chose this one also to trim, it's because it's not on-demand fealty generation. We trimmed enough 2 blocks that we're running. Trimming one of the 3 blocks feels okay, and being a 0 for 3 with an on hit is kind of meh, because you really want the on hit to hit, but it's a 0 cost. It's a 3 power instead of a breakpoint, so we trimmed it. Ignite's still good. What we swapped the Hot on Their Heels for is the Mark with Magma. If you saw the previous version, we're at 3 and 1. This version we're at 2 and 2. So I moved one of the Hot on Their Heels for Mark with Magma, which is the same thing. It's a 1 cost, but we can support the 1 cost since we're running blues, and it's a breakpoint, so it's much easier to land your marks. Next is a lot of people might disagree with me for cutting down Oath of Loyalty from 3 to 2, since it's so good, right? It's 4 go again, Draconic, 3 block, 0 cost, no downside, right? Well, actually, it has quite a huge downside. Like, since we're running 3 empowerments, 6 of the Art of Dragon Blood, we're running Devotion Never Dies, and we're running 2 Take the Tempos, plus we have the Stab Wound, Dragon Power, and Rowdy Locals as our non-draconic attacks, and Throw Dagger as well. There's enough non-draconic cards that if we draw this early enough without fealty, or we see multiples, this card really sucks in multiples. You're either forced to arsenal one of it or block with one of it, and when you're at a time when you want to push damage and you're hoping whatever you draw off the top you can play it for damage, and then you draw Oath from the top of your deck from your momentum trigger, it feels really bad. So in order to cut down the odds of seeing multiple Oath of Loyalty in a hand, going from 3 to 2 reduces the chance by 66%. So you have naming cards A, B, and C for Oath A, Oath B, Oath C. If you have 3 copies, right, you can see A plus B, A plus C, or B plus C. So that's the odds of it happening. If you're down to 2, there's only A plus B. There's no other combination. So by trimming 1 copy, you're reducing the chance of seeing multiples by 66%, which is a huge decrease in odds, and I like those odds. So even though it's a really good card, then like, oh yeah, it's a 3 block. If you see multiples, just block with it. But a lot of the time, against blocky decks, against people who try to stop your momentum triggers, you have full tempo. And being forced to arsenal one of it, or when you try to push damage and you draw it off the top from momentum, just feels really bad. So yeah, don't feel bad for trimming it from 3 to 2. What I did with the extra copy was run Rising Resentment. Since we're running a lot of 1-cost cards, the discount part is like a lot more threatening than compared to a redline list where they run a ton more head jabs. And second, sometimes like with the reduced blue count, we draw into an all red hand, and this helps you fix that easier by being a starter, because we don't really like want to pitch one of our cards to a dagger for a starter, since that's like -2 value. Having more starters in the deck other than Ignite and Brand is nice and very welcome. We're still at 3 Spreading Flames. It's one of the main reasons for us to play a blue line list, because this plus a blue is at minimum a 1 for 7, and for each Draconic card on top of that, you're getting +1 value usually, because you spreading dagger, so your head jab, you're 0 for 3. It's on Chainlink 4, so you're getting +1 there, and then after that it's Chainlink 5, so you play a 0 for 4, it becomes a 0 for 5. So yeah, it gets really good really fast, and with a large hands. Wrath is the spec, no reason not to run it. Now for the blues, cut down from 16 to 13, but it's basically a swap of 3 blue brand to 3 yellow brands. But we did do some rearranging of the blues, namely being the 3 dragon powers and 1 rowdy locals. I swapped it into a 2 and 2, a more even split. It's because we're running more non-draconic cards in Devotion Never Dies and Take the Tempo. So our fealty is more taxed, so we want to reduce the load on our fealties, the pressure there, and Rowdy Locals is just good whenever. It's really good with Massive Momentum. They can't block this with 1 card unless it's a reaction or armor. And you have the option whether you want to keep the draw, so you resolve the Rowdy Locals triggers first, and then you momentum trigger, and then you arsenal it, or if you want them to lose a card, you can like draw momentum first and then let Rowdy Locals resolve, and then discard that and force your opponent to discard as well. So yeah, that's the only swap we made for the blue. We're still running 3 concealed, 3 throw dagger, and 3 stab wounds, as that is our premier blue 3 blocks. So last card of the main deck is Take the Tempo. So since we're more easily threatening the opponent with multiple links, and I want more on hits to threaten my aggro opponent, we want cards that have scary on hits, and Take the Tempo is very good not only against aggro decks that don't really want to block, it's also good into decks that like blocking, but they usually like to block with like 2 or 3 cards. Well, you attack, they block here, you flick, you attack again, they have to block again, and then the Massive Momentum is no longer a threat, but then you attack with Take the Tempo, which is a 5 power, so usually they have to give up 2 cards, or else you get a card from the top of your deck for your next turn. And for aggro mirrors, like, this is an extra momentum trigger. It allows you to have like up to a 6 card hand, like 4 cards arsenal plus a Take the Tempo card, which is just really nasty, since this deck has the capability of ramping up damage more exponentially compared to Redline Cindra, which is more linear since we have access to Spreading Flames and Wrath of Retribution. This card works better if you have more card, especially if you draw into Bloodrun's Deep or Burning Blade Dance, allowing you to reset the daggers for you to then buy back again. That's it for the main deck. Next up for the sideboard, we again have drawn inspiration from the Redline Cindra list. It's more lean, more clean compared to the old version where we had the massive Pouncing Links package, 2 Salt and Wound, 1 Tenacity, and Pouncing Links. We figured that the massive momentum is just the way to go in every matchup. We're keeping our Warmonger, so that's the same. We're keeping our Dagger for Concealed Blade, that's the same. We're keeping our Tide Flippers for the AB, but we're cutting our Snapdragon Scalers. We figured out that the Dragon Scaler Flight Path is always the boots to go. Being 1 block, Battle Worn, just helps you keep more cards in your hand. Loyalty Beyond the Grave has been a good performer against for longer matchups, but the main difference is what we cut these for is for 3 Wax On and 2 Breaking Points. So Wax On is for the assassin matchups and for aggro mirrors. Whenever you're put first, you want to put in like 1 to 2 Wax Ons depending on like how comfortable you are. You don't want to put in all 3 in an aggro mirror because you don't want to get clunked up with multiple in hand. Running only 1 is 100% chance you don't see multiple. Running 2, you have a low chance of seeing multiple, but it's easier for you to have like big value cards like a 0 for 4 or 0 for 5 for you to take back the tempo that is given to the opponent by virtue of them playing second. And next up is Breaking Point. So having on hits is very, very important. So if you're in aggro race, sometimes you just swap out 2 of your Art of Dragon Fire, although they're really good, they're 1 for 7s. Having 1 for 5 that threatens their arsenal is better because, like I iterated before, you can threaten 4 links with 3 cards, blue, and 2 actions. Meanwhile, the opponent can't do the same. A Redline Cindra with 3 cards can only threaten 3 links unless they flick and then they attack with a dagger using the resource from the chest after flicking. Having more on hits in an aggro mirror where both decks are not ever trying to block and just trying to use all the cards on offense is a really good way to go. Yeah, I'll be linking the Cindra deck list, the newest one, in the description down below. Feel free to compare it, try it out. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. But before the video ends, please check out how the deck functions in an aggro mirror in the gameplay section coming right up. So let's head on over to the gameplay. And we're in the gameplay section of updated Blue Cindra list. This is the matchup that we're seeking, where we want to be in the aggro mirror. This is what the blue deck is meant to do. First, it provides more chain links with fewer cards because a single blue is 2 daggers instead of a head jab. It's less damage but more links, which means you're more likely to be able to get your massive momentum trigger. Secondly, we're playing more on hits. We're playing 2 Take the Tempos, 2 Devotion Never Dies, and those are very, very relevant. Plus, we're going to be playing boarding in our breaking points, swapping them out for our 1/4/7s. How we board the next part depends if we're going first or second. If we're going second, what means we're going to be having tempo, so we don't need to board in our D-reacts. If we go first, which means we'll be behind in the aggro race. I usually board in from 1 to 2 Waxons to catch up to get that 1 card 4 to 5 value to block out their 0 for 4s or their lava bursts to catch up. And third, why this deck is preferred in the aggro mirror, we have way more 3 blocks since we're running less head jabs. We're running more, like almost all of our blues block 3, and we don't have as many head jabs, so we have a lot better quality blocking. We can set up until we get this huge turn if you get spreading blue and wrath, and since the opponent doesn't run disruption, you can easily overrun them if that hand aligns. And if you have Devotion Never Dies and the aggro mirror, they don't have a lot of armor. They either give you 2 cards or they eat a ton of damage. Equipment, you run standard loadout. They don't have arcane damage. No need to use flippers. The goal for the first turn is if you have a crappy hand, you want to filter it. If they're trying to attack you, block as much of it as possible. Throw Dagger is, we want to keep our Devotion Never Dies, and preferably if we can keep a blue with it, but if we can keep Devotion plus Ancestral, that's also best, because usually they can like use a 3 block and block with this and feel comfortable with it without over blocking. Then you blow them out with Ancestral Empowerment. So our first 2 blocks are going to be Rowdy Locals and Throw Dagger. If they use a 4 power attack, we're going to block with this. If they just send a dagger, we're going to eat the dagger and use this to block a head jab. If we're forced to block again, and then we'll block with the Ancestral Empowerment. So yeah, the goal of the first turn is to not leak damage. If we're forced to block with our Devotion Never Dies, so be it. Yep, we're gonna block with our Empowerment. Worst case scenario is if they attack with a Lava Burst, they're gonna get 3 damage through, but they don't get an Arsenal. But most likely they're just gonna Arsenal. That's if you're ever put first in an aggro mirror, you want to have an Arsenal, even though in most cases you don't really want to Arsenal because you don't want to run into your opponent's the Arsenal Disruption breaking point. Okay, this hand's kinda iffy since we didn't get to keep the blue, but it's serviceable. So we dagger here, we pitch this. Most likely they're gonna let it hit. We grab a resource and then we play our Devotion Never Dies. And hopefully we draw into a head jab or a blue. So they're probably gonna use a 3 block plus Dragon Scaler. They're not blocking here. We're still gonna Empowerment because they can't wax on this. This is not a 0 cost. Okay. We rebuy our Devotion. We can Blood Run Steep and get 2 resources. Oh, wait. We can't Blood Run Steep since this is not a Draconic. Yeah, we can Devotion Never Dies again, and this is its own trigger plus a mass trigger. If they let this hit, then... Oh wait, it doesn't trigger since the last thing was not... Okay, that's fine. They're just letting damage through. But yeah, Devotion Never Dies there was a 2 card 8. And we get to breaking point here. This is exactly what you don't want to arsenal in the mirror. And not arsenaling is better for us because we can, with 3 cards, we can threaten 4 chain links. Meanwhile, if they're blocking with, if they're only ever always have a 4-card hand, if they ever block with 1, just means that we can block with 1 card at the 3rd chain link and it'll stop their mass trigger for a certain. Meanwhile, they still have to block twice against us because we're able to provide 4 links with 3 cards. So they're just eating the damage. Don't forget to rebuy your daggers. Yep, this is a serviceable hand. We Oath, Display, Brand, Flick for resource into breaking point. So I don't see us blocking here. We're probably going to be eating like 16, 17 damage. Yeah, since this was on the first chain link, there's no threat of it reducing a 1 cost into a 0 cost. And we don't have Arsenal, so we're not afraid of their 1-for-5s. They're the worst 1-for-5 they can play is Take the Tempo. But if it's like Art of Dragonfire, sure, it's 7 damage, but it's just damage. It doesn't do anything to stop us from playing our turn. And since they're doing this, they're probably going to fetch a resource, which means they have a 1-cost Ender, and they are going to arsenal the other card. Or they have a 1-cost Extender. If they draw a brick, or they have an Ender and they draw into another Ender or into a 1-cost card, means that they're going to have a card in their arsenal, which we want for our breaking point, because this, even with Blue Cindra, you have red line hand sometimes. And this threatens 4, 3, 3, 1, 5 for 16 total plus arsenal disruption. Yep, and usually when they Cindra, that's an indicator that they're going to end their turn. Oh wait, but they grab the resource. Yeah, they attack us for 7, down to 17, but we have a 4-card hand. So if they block at either the brand or the display, we can flick to continue the turn. So yeah, it's imperative. Yeah, being a good Cindra player means knowing when to block. It's very rarely ever right, because most of your cards attack more than they block for. But there are spots where if you don't block, you're just gonna lose out. If they block twice, there might be a reason for us to arsenal our breaking. There is a huge reason for us to arsenal our breaking point, because first, they won't be able to threaten Mom, and second, we're not threatened by their breaking point, because breaking point needs 4 chain links. So yeah, we're going to be playing down a dagger, but we're fine since this doesn't do anything. It doesn't threaten Arsenal, doesn't threaten Mom. This will not be threatened by anything. It's impossible for them to provide 4 chain links with 2 cards unless this is a blue plus an attack, but we can just block on the first dagger if they pitch a blue, but most decks are red line and they don't want blues, other than throw dagger, which throw daggers they're gonna play instead of use to pitch for daggers. So yeah, and on top of that, if they dagger attack, they need to top deck a breaking point, and they already blocked with one, so it's far less likely that they have that. Okay, they're probably just gonna attack for 3 and then pass the turn. Oh, it's they have a 1 cost. If it's a take the tempo, we can block 5. Since we don't have enough resource to play our Demonstrate Devotion. Yeah, drawing more 1 cost cards is usually better because they're so much more value. But they're already out of their tunic. Yep, probably Art of Dragon Fire. Yeah, there's no need to block here. Down to 6. And we need to threaten lethal ASAP. Okay, sadly this doesn't discount. We're most likely gonna empowerment here regardless. Hopefully we draw into a blue. We play the devotion. Playing a break, and another point is we have more breakpoints. Okay, they're letting this hit, so we'll... Yeah, we have more breakpoints since we're running Mark of Magma and Devotion Never Dies. More breakpoints means it's harder to block out. Yeah, we can kunai before we breaking point, and they still need to give us blocks on this. If not, they just die from this plus flick. What we can do here is we can Cindra. We can throw dagger. So let's see what we draw, and then we decide if we want to Dragon Scaler or not. It's a Blaze Headlong, so we don't need the resource. We can pass. We're losing 1 block value on our own Dragon Scaler, but they're down to 1 and we're providing a breakpoint. So we're either taking a card plus Flick Knives or 2 cards. And we still have 4 armor left. Preferably we only block with 3 and then we just attack with anything and then flick. Yep, that's fine. Oh, what we could have done is probably get the value from the Blood Splatter Vest, attack with Dagger first, and then Blaze Headlong. That would have taken at least 2 cards, because the Dagger blocked by Flick, and then the 4 is blocked by 2 cards, and with only 2 cards, it's hard for them to threaten us at 6. But 3 cards, I think we can easily survive with blocking 1 card and then blocking with Mass plus Vest. That will leave us at 3. Ooh, Ignite's annoying because it's gonna be like 2 and then 1. Yep, we can block this with Mask and then block their Dagger with Vest. So we still have our 4 card hand to block their hand. keeping your life total higher is usually better, because even without flick knives, cards like Blood Runs Deep and Throw Daggers are sources of unpreventable damage that is very hard to deal with. And yeah, we can take whatever the last thing is. There is no cards that is a 0 for 6. Down to 2. It's fine. Our turn can be Dagger, Blood Runs Deep, Blaze Headlong, Flick Knives. And that's too many sources of damage. Yep. It's going to be 1, 1, 2, 4, and then Flick. So they needed to have shelter to cover the dagger, this dagger, and the flick. Block this, and then block this with a 2 cards. We get to rebuy both daggers. We have full tempo. That's assuming they have both shelter and another D-react. Yeah, this shelter to cover this, this, and this. They need 1 card to cover this. They need 2 cards to cover this, or a D-react for 4 to cover this, and they get to keep 1 card, but we get to rebuy both our daggers back. And then if they send a card, it's going to be at most at 4. We can block with a 3 block, and we kept 3 card hand plus 2 daggers. At that point, we just keep threatening with our flick knives, and at one point they're gonna run out of shelter from the storms. So yeah, this is why I feel like Blue Cindra is slightly favored, even with our like weird clunky draws and like having an all red hand with our Devotion Never Dies. We still got there. So yeah, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That is the best free way you can support me creating free Flesh and Blood content straight to your YouTube video feed. As always, I've been Mas Bulay Mine, and sampai goodbye.